broke the frame. Here we go. Starting off right. Hello everyone. This is Rachel here, the Modern Shaman. Thanks for being with me for another YouTube Q&A video this week. I am glad you're back. Those of you guys, if you're new to my channel, I always start with a little recommendation that you check out my website. Just because all the resources and really further information that I don't want to just have to talk about on this video are there. That's what they're there for. So if you'd like to meet with me one-on-one for sessions, I still do that. It's my full-time job as well as teaching this curriculum. And I always have modules available on my masterclass curriculum. That's also on the website, as well as my one-on-one sessions for healing, soul retrievals, future probabilities, past life viewing, channeling, you name it. It's all there on the website to help you all, as well as just strengthening and developing and remembering your own gifts, who you are, and your connections that are native within you to be able to connect and speak and communicate wholeheartedly with the non-physical realm. So if you're interested in any of that, please go to the website, themodernshaman.net. Okay, let's get on with it. Today's a little different because I'm doing a follow-up question. Sometimes when I do these videos, you guys send in follow-up questions to the video. And so today's one of those days. And this question is a follow-up video referring to the question that I answered on the video called Too Many Sexual Partners. That was a few weeks back, if you'll look back in the archive. So I'd recommend that you watch that video first so that this makes sense. Okay. Okay, and so it says, "Hi Rachel, a topic that I have not heard discussed and would like some clarity on is cord cutting and ceremonial practices in regards to rape and sexual abuse. I'm assuming the same practices and suggestions you mentioned on the video, Too Many Sexual Partners, would apply here as well." So, on that video, like I said, if you haven't watched it already, I would recommend that you go back and watch the video called Too Many Sexual Partners, because I give practices and ceremonies on cleansing, ritual cleansing, ritual bathing, and fire ceremonies of cord cutting, burning connection, and then standing on essentially what is a new cycle, a new life cycle of creating that full-fledged death cycle of what is gone and no longer relevant for you, and then standing in a new birth cycle. So I talk a little bit about that in that video. And I don't mention sexual partners or sexual experiences that have to do with sexual trauma and how to heal those. So I love that you're asking this question, because honestly, a lot of people that come to me as a healer, or if you are also a healer and work with other clients, a lot of what you'll experience in terms of wanting people to heal, or people coming to you as clients, they're wanting to heal trauma. And this is negative experiences in this life or another that are still having impact or blockage in their current experience. And so this is a very relevant question. I will open it up a little bit and say it doesn't just have to be rape or sexual abuse. It can be any experience of trauma that you can use the suggestions that I give you today in order to promote your own healing and assimilation with your soul. So the first thing I will say is that the practices I mentioned, and I'll go through those briefly, are ceremonial bathing and cleansing. Okay, and this is a type of baptismal, like cleansing and rededication. Water, if you are familiar with Dr. Emoto's work, can be imbued with any intention that you give it. It has memory. It stores a sense of memory, and they actually have water computers now. There's so much fascinating research going into the use of water right now, and it is really on the cutting edge if you're into kind of the science behind all of this natural, really our elementals. I feel like we're finally getting some research going on with the high level of capabilities of basic elementals that are so primal to our experience and yet often overlooked. So water, setting the intention of water, whether it be holy water, baptismal water, water in the bathtub, essentially setting the intention. And I like to set intention of water. Okay, do you see this back here? I'm going to point with my finger to my background. Boop, these two, without me walking back there, these two tinctures are just full of water. And you can hold, and I do this in one of my modules in the masterclass teaching curriculum in level 2. This is, I'm not sure which module it is, but it's probably around like modules 10, 13, around there. You learn how to imbue water, and it is so not hard. I just give you the tools, but I'll tell you right now, all you gotta do is stand in that authority or the posture of your own alignment, okay? Which is an elongated spine, a sense of authority, meaning you're not hunched over, you're not shrinking your sense of soul or self, you're fully activated in your auric field. Tall posture, your feet are in vertical alignment with your hips and your shoulders. This is just a posture of authority, okay? People stand in this when they give speeches, when they want to motivate preachers, any of those people. It is a standard posture of elongation of our pranic tube, which follows our spine and our vagus nerve all the way up the body and elongates the chakras, all of the chakras within the body of those 7 traditional chakras run along that pranic tube. So we elongate that connection, and then we hold in our palms the water. And essentially, we set the intention by thinking the thought and then vibrating that thought into the glass container. Okay, so your palm chakras are known for having energy come out of them. They are like when you see videos and even cartoons, right? They show like people going and all the electricity and the energy is coming out of the palm chakras. This is a very ancient tradition and knowledge of the palm chakras and the receptors that send out energy versus receiving in. So it's a natural pranic flow or chi flow of our natural energy and the way that it is expressed out through fingertips, through hands. So we hold it by setting the intention. I mean, you think the thought and you activate the heart chakra with that intention. Okay, if you've never gone through, I have a module on intention too, and how to fully activate the intention. It's just not thought, it's not nullified thought. So it has an extreme amount of emotional energy, heart-based energy, passion. You feel it, you think it, you're active, okay? Think about that word, activation. It's an active thought. It's not a passive thought. It's not null of energy or 0 point energy. Instead, it's the opposite. Okay, so you want to put all of that loving, active intention into that water. This water is going to purify me, make me whole, cleanse me like a newborn baby. You put all of that into your desired water, whether it be a bath by simply putting your hands over the water, in the water, and submerging them right before you begin, setting that intentional form of using water and essentially creating the memory there of what it's supposed to do when it connects with your own body, your cells, and moves in through the largest organ that we have, which is our skin. It's our hugest receptor. So setting that intention and starting with the ritual bathing or cleansing. By ritual, it just has a very intentional, sacred, and holy space to you. Meaning set it up beforehand. Let it be intentional and ceremonial. When we do these things without ceremony, we can still do them, but they begin to lose the impact or the power behind ceremony. When we set it up with a very intentional honor and sacredness within us, it amplifies, literally, like if you're thinking of a frequency or a radio tower, it turns up the amplification. Okay? We're turning those speakers up to 11, right? Dialing it up and amplifying it with our intention through ceremony and ritual. Okay, then the next thing that I suggested on the video, and I'll go a little deeper into that, is that cord cutting and fire ceremony. Okay, now this is writing down on pieces of paper, getting very intentional about what you're letting go. Cord cutting is finding the connection of energy and where you're connected to this person or this event. Now, this one shifts a little bit because when we have experiences of trauma, most often what I see as a shaman is we move into what I call soul loss. Okay, it's similar to what a psychologist may call disassociation. All right, and so disassociation, when I view it in my psychic vision and clairvoyance, or I'm tuning into it as a shaman, oftentimes it looks like sections of you that have bubbled off and they're now outside of the body. Okay, this is why people say, I feel like I'm walking around and I'm not in my body. Okay, when we disassociate, we move sections of our soul or those fragments outside of ourself, and they kind of hold like a tether. Oftentimes when I see them in my clairvoyance, they look like one of those comic book bubbles, okay? As if you've got an organ or you've got so it's very like fleshy to me when I see it, like a material of the body or skin or like an organ. And it's hovering outside of the self. It's no longer inside the body, but it's attached with some sort of cord, or it's attached with some sort of tether. Umbilical cord. They may look different depending on your own psychic vision, or you may just feel them in your auric field. But essentially, when something feels unsafe, okay, say the experience of rape or sexual abuse, this can be in a relationship. This can also, like I said earlier, in a broader sense, be verbal abuse. This can be psychological trauma. This can be bullying to an extreme. This can be any event that was so traumatic to you at whatever age you were that you didn't feel safe in that situation in your own body. Okay? When that experience comes to fruition in a person, they disassociate or they pull out, not all, but they have the opportunity. And oftentimes this is what we do without realizing it. We psychologically feel so unsafe in our own body that we pull parts of our soul out and hold it safe in our auric field. Okay, because we're like, okay, the body is no longer a safe house for this, particularly sexual trauma or physical abuse, because it's happening to our physical form, and that no longer is safe for us. And so we move our heart. Oftentimes it's the heart organ, sometimes it's the liver and stomach. I'm not sure why, but oftentimes it's parts of those sections of our body. We move it out and we hold it in our auric field as kind of a safekeeping. Okay, because our body is no longer that safe space. This type of disassociation happens with the trauma. And so the difference here in ceremonial practices for healing any type of sexual trauma is that we first cut that cord, and then there is a vacancy that we have to deal with. There's a vacancy in the soul. There's a vacancy in sometimes the organs or the chakras of the body that almost feel uncomfortable to us. And oftentimes when I'm working with clients and doing this type of healing, when they have disassociated or they have soul fragmentation and they're hovering those parts of themselves in their auric field, they will feel very uncomfortable. They won't like it. They won't know how to describe it, but it almost feels on the inside of the body psychologically as if there is a nerve exposed in the tooth. Right? That's a comparison I often use to those clients. Or like you walk outside on a cold, brisk day and you breathe all of that cold air in and it's uncomfortable, right? Or like your teeth, there's nerves exposed. The vacancy feels very exposing and uncomfortable, okay? And so what happens is those spaces begin to hurt in a strange psychological way, and they must have assimilation or soul retrieval to replace and pull back in that retracted aspect of what you disassociated with. Oftentimes it's the heart, it's the emotions, like I said. Sometimes it's the stomach, sometimes it's the sexual organs. You'll push those out, depending if it's physical abuse that happened in certain areas or with certain things. Like if you retracted back from cigarette burns, I've had that, like people being kind of bullied and teased and physically abused by certain elements, they'll pull back and retract and push back through the other side energetically. And so those retracted pieces must be pulled back and reassimilated. That's a step I did not talk about in my previous video about too many sexual partners. That is brought in or added in when you're working with trauma and disassociation with soul fragments. So the way that you would do that, I would first suggest that you work with someone that knows how to do this, okay? If you feel intuitively very strong, like I know I can do this, I feel called to do this with myself or to work with my own practice of healing. And some people do, okay? And don't devalidate that. I will say, it's not always that you need to go outside of yourself for these answers, okay? I mean, I know what I do for a living, but I will tell you that it's not about a professional all the time, okay? It's about you recognizing what your soul needs. If your soul says, I need to work with this person, okay, you listen. If your soul says, I need to do this in my private meditation practice, in my private healing space, on a certain weekend, you listen to that, okay? The practice is essentially, once that clearing has been made, identifying the vacancy, where that's located. And oftentimes that's where the cord or the tether was attached in the first place. So if it was attached to the heart chakra, the vacancy will be felt in the heart chakra. Sometimes it's multiple places because, as you know, when we cut cords, sometimes it's in our third eye, like our psychic connection, as well as our heart, as well as our sacral chakra and the womb space if it's been sexual abuse and trauma. And so sometimes there's multiple centers that have vacancies. You identify those by energetic work, by noticing the vacancy. Now, if you are clairsentient and are feeling the sensation of non-physical energy, you may feel that coldness that I talked about. That's oftentimes how I feel it. Sometimes in my clairvoyance, I will see it. So you may see like a cave or a hole or what looks like scar tissue there in certain areas of the body. So first you identify where the vacancy is. And then through invitation, you invite back in that missing soul fragment to assimilate in with as much ease and grace into that vacancy as possible. Now you do this, you can do it in a lot of ways. You can do it through Reiki, essentially the movement and manipulation of energy. So shamanic healing does this. We do this with feathers. We do this with rattling. You can do this with your own hand. It's essentially the awareness of feeling energy and then being able to manipulate and force the movement and change of that energy. Okay, like I said, some people do it through singing bowls and moving those bowls or being able to direct the energy. But essentially, you need someone or yourself that is familiar with manipulating and directing energy and changing the form of it from outside the body into a diffused, almost like a vapor that soaks in through the pores and through the skin back into the missing vacancy there. Once it's in its home, the practice is not necessarily ceremonial. That's a healing practice. That's an energy healing method, right? Whether, again, it doesn't matter what modality you use to do it. Anyone who is familiar with energy healing, moving soul fragments into the body, or feeling through your own clairsentience, your own psychic gifts, where it's located, where the vacancy is, and being able to move it back into place. Then you seal it up. Okay, as a shaman, I do this with heat. I do this with fire elements. You can do it with your own breath, heating on your hands and then sealing it up as if you're cauterizing a wound. But you need to essentially seal up that opening, right? That everything came through, whether it came through the skin, whether you opened it up, cutting. Sometimes I cut in with my selenite. I have a selenite tool. I have a diamond tool. I also have a Lemurian quartz that I use to open in the auric field. But as a practitioner, you seal up that space. Sometimes we do psychic surgery and we sew it up. There are many different methods to sealing, but it is an energy practice, sealing that up, making sure that everything essentially has a new skin, just like a scar, but without a sense of friction to that energy. It's smooth. It is new. This is the birthing part of it, where it is a new skin. And then you essentially let that assimilate. When I work with clients and I do deep shamanic healing, soul retrievals, these types of assimilation of soul fragments, it's common, and I tell them all the time, it's literally in my literature that goes out when you schedule an appointment with me, that if you've had this deep type of work done, be very gentle with your body within the next 3 days typically. Some people it's even longer, because it will feel like you've literally been through surgery, and this is post-op time. So give your body time to readjust. It's been used to living with that trauma outside the body, with that organ not in there. It's been used to a completely different energetic setup in your body. And so when you're moving things around, just like if you have ever had physical surgery, there is a time afterwards where you're very gentle. You don't go run a marathon right afterwards. You don't eat like crazy. You're not highly active. You've got to let those things be reabsorbed and let the connections energetically reconnect. Okay, so all of those chakras are reconnecting. The chi, or the flow of your energy, is now reconnecting. The synapses, all the energetic neurons within the mental mind and the spiritual body are reconnecting. So there's a time of re-assimilation that you need to be aware of afterwards, where you give yourself essentially recuperation time. That is very, very important, and it's still part of the process, because just like if we don't mourn and go through the death process of something that is no longer relevant for us, that can kind of live like a zombie because we never quite said it's dead and gone. We don't have the closure. That's what people know as closure. As a shaman, we speak of that as the full death cycle. You never let it have its full death cycle. The same is true when we give healing to something, okay? We've cut that off. We have an awareness that it is gone, and now we give time to the new birth cycle. When you have a new baby, right, you don't go out and run a marathon that next day. There is a time of re-assimilating and letting the body have its readjustment to what you have brought back in and invited in as your full holistic sense of self and soul. So those are my recommendations to you, and I pray that they are helpful in some way, shape, or form. All right, I will say, if you guys want to send in a video question, not a video, but a question for a video. If you want to send in a video question for this YouTube channel, you can do that through the website. I always love hearing from you guys. I love reading your comments. So make sure that you stay in touch with me in that way. And I'll be back next week with another video. Mwah! Blessings, you guys. Much love.